Hello everyone. This is a tutorial purely made, hold on. This is going to be a series of tutorials for the Tomcat, purely made for my friend. But really anyone can learn from this, you know. Disclaimer. This is not a tutorial series you want to watch if you just want to start it and fly it immediately. Of course, I want you to know this plane inside and out as well as I do. And I think the first place to start with that would be to get to know a little bit about her. Alright, so I'm going to Alt-Tab over to this very old slideshow I made. Very old slideshow I made that I never used in school, even though that's what I meant. Even though that's what I meant to make it for, but I never used it. So I'm going to use it to teach you guys a little bit about the F-14. Development, it was developed late 1960s as a fleet defense intercept aircraft, right? So, like every other jet, it was designed from a program. Surprise, surprise. This program was known as the VFX program. It was based around the TF-30 engine, which originated from the F-111 Aardvark, which is not a fighter plane, which would prove to not be good later, right? So TF-30 engine, AWG-9 radar, and the AIM-54 missile. AIM-54 and AWG-9 will be your best friend during your Tomcat career, I guess. So, like I said, this goal of the program was to make an effective fleet air defense airplane for all types of combat, air-wise, so dogfights, BVR, etc. The F-14 was made to replace a fighter jet falling behind in the modern era, the F-4 Phantom. The earliest known development for the Tomcat was during the 1950s. The F-14 Tomcat was built and tested in Long Island by Grumman Aerospace Corps. During 1969, during the development of the F-14, came the concern of the Soviet air-launched cruise missiles. But after many design changes and attempts, the F-14 eventually developed with the counter to the Soviet air-launched cruise missiles. Alright, so yeah, that's basically a little background on the Tomcat. We're going to look a little further, right? Why was it developed? I'm not going to get too in-depth into here because, well, obviously we want to fly, right? But basically it was meant to replace the aging F-4 Phantom and the failed F-111B Aardvark. Some specifications, this is sort of important. It has a Vulcan rotary cannon, fire up to 60-70 rounds a second. The cool thing about it on the Tomcat is that you can switch between fire rates, between low and high, so that's cool. This is a very fast airplane, Mach 2.34, with the F-110 engines in the B variant. Later on, it was equipped with a precise INS system and lantern pod. Its main weapons were the AIM-54, AIM-7, and AIM-9, which we'll get into in the future. The AWG-9 was one of its critical components, which we'll also get into later. Very long range. This thing probably has one of the longest ranges in DCS compared to other modules. It has almost 20,000 pounds worth of fuel compared to the F-16 that has just over 10,000. Its operational service ceiling is around 50,000 feet. It's very easy to get carried away and go to like 40,000 feet on accident. But, you want to get high up if you're trying to use the Phoenix or anything like that, right? And it was able to pull up to 7.5 Gs, but this is DCS, so you can pull as many as you want before your wings rip off. Different variants. The two variants that are in DCS is the A and the B. Major difference between the two is the engines. Alright, so we're going to delve into, so you get two options, alright, when you buy the F-14. The A variant is fitted with the Pratt & Whitney TF-30 engines. The way you can tell the difference between the two is the engine nozzles. You'll notice these ones are a little more modern. Maybe something sort of similar to the F-16, maybe. And these ones, they look different, right? So the TF-30s were meant to be fitted on the F-111, which is a interceptor bomber, whatever, which is not obviously a fighter jet. So when the engine's put in a stressing situations, like high G, high alpha maneuvers, it can cause compressor stalls, which I'll showcase soon. But yeah, that's the main difference. These engines way less reliable and powerful. F-14B or the F-14A plus, if you were you don't know. So F-14B was fitted with the F-110 GE400 afterburning turbofan engines. Big upgrades, more reliable, more powerful, etc. F-14D is not on DCS, but basically better radar, more modernized. You see it has MFDs and stuff. We're going to move on. This is not important. Flaws. This is sort of important. Yeah, you know what? That's basically all you need to know. It's you want to get to know. You're going to spend a lot of time with this airframe, so let's get to know it a little more. All right. First thing we're going to look at is cockpit familiarization. Right, we're in the cockpit of the F-14 Bravo. You can tell by the engine nozzles, right? So we're going to go from left to right, up and around, starting at the back here. Very back panel, back left panel, you have your oxygen switch. Self-explanatory, you flip it up and your pilot will be able to breathe. First switch you flip on during the startup process, right? Vent airflow does not work. Volume knobs, self-explanatory. Your ALR67 is your RWR, so if you want to turn down your RWR, flip that down. Sidewinder volume, you want to turn it down, flip that down. And here's your radio volume. TACAN command, I'll get into that when we reach the TACAN. Intercom volume, so you can talk between your RIO. That's not really, everyone just use Discord nowadays, right? So, AFCS, this is like autopilot, control dampening, so all these stab augmentation switches. Pitch roll yaw dampens the flight controls, makes the plane a little easier to fly. Here's your autopilot. Sorry, you flip this up, it'll be like an attitude hold. So let's say I'm holding an attitude or a direction. I flip this up, it'll hold it there. Here's your heading. Autopilot, altitude autopilot. And this is, where it starts to get complicated, automatic carrier landing and vector and, stuff like that. That's a whole other thing. I'm going to go over here. TACAN. TACAN is basically navigation by radio signals. So if I go to an F10 map here, you'll see there might not be any on this mission, but there will be a little icon, maybe something like this, and it'll say a number and X or Y, right? So it'll say 84X, right, I guess. So you'd go down here and you can set it to 84X, right? And you would go to steer command, TACAN, make sure the HSD mode is in nav, and you would be able to get a range and bearing on where that TACAN station is for navigation, right? Very simple form of navigation, right? Up here is your UHF, so this is the pilot radio. Jester has a VHF and UHF back there, but you have a UHF radio. Less, I'd say versatile, as his can go lower in frequencies and stuff. But yeah, your radio, moving up to our throttle quadrant. Here are your engine controls, right? So you have stow inlet ramps. So I guess in the inlets are these ramps here, and I guess you have the option to stow them if you choose. Here's your engine crank switch right here. Right click it, it'll start up the right engine. Left click it, it'll start the left. Throttle temperature, I guess self-explanatory. I don't really know what that does. Throttle mode, throttle mode. Rudder trim does not work. Air start, also self-explanatory. You can restart your engines in midair. We're gonna try. Okay, I guess engine modes. Not 100% sure what that does, but let's see. You have your emergency wing sweep handle. Right, you can flip that forward and back and flip it down, whatever. The cover, your throttle, your flaps. Okay. Front left panel. Here's where things start to get interesting. Top to bottom. Emergency storage jettison. You press this big red button, all your stores go away except the two sidewinders that would be on these outer pylons. Here you can see the status of your slats, flaps, and landing gear and speed brakes. Right, so your slats being, maybe I can fold my wings out. I don't know if it'll actually come out though. No, I guess not. Slats are basically these little metal parts here. They'll come down. They help with maneuverability when you're high alpha. One second. All right. Flaps. You know what flaps do, right? Here's your landing gears. Your left, right nose landing gear. Tricycle configuration, right? Two in the back, one in the front. Here's your speed brake, right? You bring out your speed brake. That'll help you confirm that it's coming out. All right, we're gonna come down. Nose strut is for carrier takeoffs, right? So I flip it down. It'll the aircraft will actually kneel down, and a launch bar will come down, right? Allow me to hook up to the carrier. Catapult extend will retract that cattle bar. Landing gear switch or lever, self-explanatory. Pro tip: you may associate right clicking with moving a switch up and left clicking down. Do not right click this. You right click it, it'll emergency extend, and you can't bring your gear back up. All right, I've learned that the hard time many times. All right. Parking brake handle, self-explanatory. Pull it out, it's like a parking brake. Oh, you know what? Okay, so I guess I never realized this before. You right click this, and I guess you can override that. I guess I didn't know that. Hydraulic isolation switch, hydraulics, landing gear, bullcrap. Down here we have fuel, so quantity select. That basically you can see, like if I set it to external on these where it says L and R, I can see how much fuel I have left in my tanks. Set it to wing, how much I have left in my wings. Wing external trans, not really sure. Fuel dump, self-explanatory, right? You flip it, it'll start fuel dumping. Refuel probe, right? You right click it, extend the fuel probe. Master reset, basically that tells the flight computer that you're bringing your wings out, or you're having something to do with the wings. Anti-skid, very easy to forget. If you don't turn that on and you're landing, you're going to drift off the runway and die. Okay? Front panel, start with the knobs here. We'll look at these. Here's your radar altitude. Shows your radar, or shows your altitude from the, so not your height above sea level. That's this dial. This shows how far you are above the actual like ground you're flying over. Okay. Here's your altitude above sea level. Your speed. So let me see if I can. So if you see, this shows your speed in knots. This shows your speed in Mach. And this little cone here shows like the little area of like speed, I guess, you're going through. Right? So if it's like down here, it'll show 200, 250, whatever. Here's your vertical speed, you know, how fast you're going or how fast you're climbing or descending. Here's your hydraulics. So here's would be your engine nozzles, oil pressure, and your hydraulic, you know, gauges. Your engine gauges here, RPM, EGT, FF. You just monitor these if you're starting or your engine's crapping out or whatever. Onto the middle here, here's your ACM panel. Alright, so these are all your weapons. Here's your ACM cover. What that does is you flip it up and it basically tells the plane, you know, you're in sort of a dangerous spot with enemies. So like if I have Sidewinders selected, or not Sidewinders, Phoenixes selected, I flip this up. As soon as I fire, they'll come off the rails active, and it'll use its own radar, so I can fire and forget, right? And this jettison button will, you know, it's basically an emergency jettison. Alright, so if I'm in a tough spot in a dogfight, I need to jettison everything, flip it up. Or maybe it's already up and just click the button. Gun rate, self-explanatory, right? At the bottom it says low, at the top it says high, right? You can toggle between how fast the gun shoots. Sidewinder, cool. Flip this up to on, it will prep the sidewinders. If you don't turn that on, you can't fire sidewinders. Missile prep, flip that on. If you don't have it on, you can't fire your Sparrows or Phoenixes. Master arm, you know, shooty to shoot, right? Let's see here. Mode, STP, this has to do with, I guess, bore sight. It says BR, ST, something right there. I don't know, but, I mean, I guess there's stuff in here I don't know. I don't know every single thing about this plane, just as long as you know what's important. These are your stations, you know, 1A, 1B, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, blah, blah. So those are your stations, your weapon stations. Your AOA, wing sweep, so it'll say like auto, bomb, manual, off, right over here, and this shows your wing sweep in degrees. Right, your displays. It's your VDI and your HSD. VDI is basically your main attitude indicator, and you can also flip it to where it's showing the camera feed from this here camera underneath the nose, just by flipping this switch to TV. Right. Your HSD, you can toggle it between navigation mode and TSD mode. Navigation, you know, navigation. TSD, if I go back to gesture seat, or the Rio seat, sorry, when the plane is on, it'll have this screen, will show a digital, so, real quick, when the radar's on, this little screen here will show the raw radar display, so exactly what the radar sees. The TID shows what the radar sees and digitalizes it. Okay. So that's what you see here if you set it to TID. Here's your HUD filter, so if it's nighttime, flip that out. The HUD will turn red and it'll be darker. HUD trim trims out the HUD if you want to change its which direction or what angle you want it to be at. VDI trim, same thing, but for the VDI. HUD brightness, how bright your HUD is. VDI, how bright your VDI is. Contrast in your VDI. HSD selected course, bit doesn't do anything. Brightness, selected heading. Alright. Now here, standby attitude indicator, your radios, compass, and your RWR. Here's your fuel. This is very important. These lines basically give you a visual representation of how much fuel you have. Bingo, total amount of fuel, and how much you have in your left and right. This shows your G counter, so how many G's you're pulling. This is a clock, you know, like time, seconds, whatever. This is your hook, your arrestor hook. This is how many rounds you have left in your gun. It'll show on the HUD how much rounds you have, but it's a little vague. So here's your display panel. Mode. All these modes are for your HUD. So if I'm taking off, I have the HUD set to take off. If I have it in cruise, I set the HUD to cruise. If I have it in air to air, air to ground, etc., etc., etc. This switch is the HUD declutter, so if you're maybe in a tense situation, you can declutter the HUD and it'll free up some space. This is basically like that automatic carrier landing stuff. VDI, TV, norm, right? So you swap between a attitude indicator and that camera in the front. Again, same thing. Mode for the HSD, so you can swap between nav and TID. ECM, you know, electronic countermeasures, bullcrap. Here's the power to the displays right here. Steer command, so if I want to switch between TACAN, vector, manual, whatever. Alright, down here. Gun elevation leads, so if you want to change which direction your gun's facing. Spoilers on your wings, override, you don't really need to touch that. Your warning light panel, generators, air, so you know there's RAM air, you know you flip this up, a little turbine will come out, it'll provide some power for you, you know, if you're air restarting, or if you're air starting the engines. Air source, right? So when you start the engine, you need to set the air source to the engine, to the actual jet engines, right? Engine, anti-ice, windshield. Hydraulic transfer pump, you need this when you start your engines. Okay, there's not much else to it. Compass mode, some compass stuff. I'm not even really sure what this is. Anyway, your light controls. So here's your hook bypass, taxi light, floodlights, ACM panel, index lights, instrument, console, formation lights, position lights, anti-collision lights. Master tests, right? I right click it and then I can, you know, flip it up to test warnings. Emergency flight hydraulics, you lose hydraulics, you turn that on. And that's it. Alright. So now you know your way around the Tomcat. Oh, most important thing. Ejection seat. Second thing, you flip. Alright. So what we're gonna do now, we're going to show what you need binded. So buttons you need. We're going to start off simple. Trigger. Okay. Store release. Weapon selector up, down, and press. Trim. Countermeasure dispense. Autopilot reference, nose wheel steering toggle. Nose wheel steering toggle. Autopilot emergency disconnect paddle. That's if you have a little paddle in front of your joystick. Speed brake retract and extend. Cage, seam, PLM button. Toggle menu, so that's your gesture menu. Wing sweep auto and bomb. Target designate forward, PAL. Up, visual high. Down, visual low. And maybe some extra stuff if you have some switches. Alright, so that's pretty much everything you need binded. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Alright, first thing we're going to do, you're going to get armed. I'm just going to go ahead and remove these weapons. I like this livery. Puking Dogs 98 is probably my favorite livery on the Tomcat. Alright. So we're going to wait for that. In the meantime, let's take a look around the gesture menu. Gesture menu, you might say that Jester sucks, but if you know how to use him, man, you can really take that to your advantage, right? So here's your gesture menu. You can look around to choose which one you want to use, and you just look in the direction of which one you want to pick, and you press the menu button again. So he says we have no external air and power, which is important. We need external ground power and air supply because the Tomcat does not have its own battery or APU like many other aircraft in this game. So we're going to go to comms menu, ground crew, ground electrical power on. And ground air supply on. This is my 15s. And we are going to tell Jester to start. Alright, first things you want to do, oxygen on, ejection seat armed, loud and clear. Now we're going to wait for Jester to close the canopy. Note, if the plane is off and you have the canopy closed and you ask for ground power and air supply, it won't work. Because one, your radios aren't on, and two, you can't talk through solid canopy glass. So we're just going to close the canopy. So now we're ready to start the engines. You're going to go down here behind this little buckle, flip up the hydraulic transfer pump switch guard, turn on the switch, go over to our throttle quadrant, right click on the right throttle, and that'll basically introduce fuel to the engine. And we're going to right click on the engine crank switch, which will start our engine. If you take a look here, you'll see RPMs coming up, FF is coming up, EGD is coming up. Once all of these are settled, then we can start the next engine. So, starting up in the pilot seat is fairly easy. You know, especially since the work is divided in two. One for the pilot, one half for the pilot, the other for the Rio. Alright, so this is about what the engine dials show when it's settled, ready to go. So now we're going to start the other engine. Right click the throttle. Left click the engine crank switch. Wait for that to come on. See our engine's getting started. It's taking a second. There's not really much you can do in the meantime, but I just gotta wait. Looks like we're all settled. So now what we're gonna do, ground crew, turn off the ground power, and turn off the ground air supply. Wait for that. Ground air supply is not disconnected, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn off hydraulic transfer pump switch, set air source to both engines, turn on your VDI, HUD, and HSD. Now we're going to kind of look at it from here. You're going to turn on your stab augmentation, roll, or what is that, pitch, roll, yaw. Turn on your UHF radio, your TACAN. You can bit test it and spam that button a little bit. And ARA 63 on. Take a look at the front panel. Uncage the standby attitude indicator. Take the altimeter out of standby. And set the radar altitude as desired. So you hold right click it and you just move your mouse up. Set the hook bypass to field if you're on a field. Set the lights as needed. We're not going to worry about that for now. Now we're going to go set the HSD mode to TSD. And we can watch Jester align. One mistake I made a lot when I first started flying the Tomcat was when I was done, I just went. I never waited for Jester. So we're just going to wait for Jester. So yeah, we're going to wait for him. In the meantime, we'll do a little tour around the Jester menu, right? So here's your contextual menu. So whatever you might be doing in your airplane, it'll have all the displays and options ready to go. So, but we're going to go here, right? First off, radio. Alright, so if I want to tell Jester to use to set his radio to whoever, here's what I do, right? So if I want him to connect to 133.6, alright, so I go to 2 manual, 133.6, 0, right, and he'll do that for me. Alright, so that's all you need to know. Beyond visual range, these radar stuff and weapons is something to learn another day. Navigation, TACAN, manual, destination. He can do, type in the coordinates for waypoints. Countermeasures, flare mode. If I want him to set it to where I'm in control of the flares or he's in control of the flares. Chaff, flare program, RWR display type, Xmith the jammer. Alright, data link. I can tell him to set the data link, so whatever I want. Crew contact. So our contact between me and him. So inactive, no talking, eject both of us, disable landing callouts. Right. So now we just gotta wait for him. I don't know what's taking him so long. Oh, I know what it is. There's no stored heading on this. So we're just gonna wait for that. Might get awkward here, but oh, so back to the TACAN command actually. When the TACAN is on, I can choose whether I'm in control of the TACAN or Jester's in control of the TACAN. Okay. Oh shoot. Let's take a look at HUD symbology, alright? Up here is your heading tape. 20 would be 200. 21 would be 210. 22 would be 220, etc. Here's where the nose is pointing at the tip of the ear. Here is like the very center of like where you as the pilot is facing. If you look at it from the side, you can see the nose is pointing straight, but the pilot is sort of looking down in a way, in a weird way. Whoa. I did not know I could do that. But let's go back. Here's your vertical speed, radar, altitude, your angle. Okay. You go to cruise, right? You just remove some stuff. Landing. You see you have your attitude indicator here. Okay, that's about it. Set that back. I'm just gonna tell Jester to finish up.
Roger.
Wait for him to finish up here. In the meantime, here's your AOA index. It's important when it's landing. This here is your fire warning. So left engine fire, right engine fire, brakes, wheel flap warnings, right? Your circuit breakers are down here. Alright, so Jester says he's ready to taxi. Usually starting up doesn't take this long because in servers, the person who's hosting the server will have a stored heading on, but now we're going to get to the good part. Taxiing, taking off, and landing. So first thing we're going to do, most Tomcats have their wheel chocks in place, so we're going to go to ground crew, wheel chocks, remove. Alright, so he's going to do that. Copy. Wheel chocks are now removed. So now we're going to go turn on the nose wheel steering. You'll see that came up right here. Turn off the parking brake. Alright, I want to know where I'm going, so I guess we're just going to turn right onto the runway, so that's what we're going to do. And now we can taxi. Finally. So we're going to throttle up a little bit. Alright. And follow the taxi line. You want to have like that little thing with like the two like half squares in the circle that's in the center of my screen, center of the HUD. You want to try and keep that around the yellow line here. You don't never want to go too fast. You might get kicked from the server if you try and taxi too fast because it might think you're trying to take off from the taxiway. Get on the runway here. Very long, beautiful runway all to ourselves. I'm going to stop around here. Alright, first thing we're going to do before we take off, bring out the wings, bring this handle forward, right click it, close the handle, master reset, tells the computer we're setting the wings. Flaps all the way down. I have that to bind it to a little knob. Alright, wings are out. Very important to note, this plane is very fast, which means that it's very easy to jam the flaps and the landing gear. Alright, so maybe it's good to have that binded somewhere, but basically just be mindful about that, you know. Keep an eye on your speed down here. It does not tell you your speed up here. Keep an eye on your speed. Alright, you want to rotate around 150, 170. So let's get moving. So in this, you can just floor it. So let's do that. Throttling up. Get lined up with the runway a little better here. He says as I'm on the runway. Alright, turn off the nose wheel steering, pay attention to my speed, rotate. Alright, gonna cut throttle, gear up, flaps up. Gonna set the HUD to cruise. And we're up. So maybe you want to trim out a little bit. One thing you'll notice is that this thing does not have a flight computer. So if I'm going 600 knots and I just yank back on the stick, the engine or the wings will just rip off. Okay, it'll shake a lot in high alpha situations. The cockpit will shake. You know, this thing, it's very different. It's very fun. The fact that this plane can keep up with the modern fighters that are in this game, like the F-16 or F-18, is just, it makes this plane so much fun. You know, it's the first module I bought in this game, but of course I would like to fly around a little bit with you here, but I got to teach you how to land. We'll be landing on runway 33 here, so I'm gonna do something a little stupid. Throttle back. You see how I'm shaking? Going about 400 knots here. I'm gonna try and get to like a crappy case 1 situation here. So I'm gonna come in, set my HUD to landing. Now I'm not a professional. I don't know VRS callouts or whatever, or specific approaches. I'm just semi-casual DCS player. The landing gear and flaps on this thing will jam at about 220 knots. So keep that in mind when you employ them. Game's frozen. We're good. Just get some throttle here. Turn a little less. No need to turn any more than this. This is a horrible approach, but one thing to keep in mind is that this is a naval plane, so have no fear just slamming it on the ground. But maybe you wanna, that was my cat, sorry, but maybe you do want to do a little smooth. It really doesn't matter. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure anti-skid is on. Set that to both. And we're going to just get set up on approach here. I'm going to slow down a little bit. This is an absolutely horrible approach. Okay, I'm going to put my flaps and gear down here soon. Get an eye on the runway. I'm going to level out here. Bring the flaps and gear down. feel that when when the flaps come down. Alright, gear flap is down. Okay. We want to find runway 33. It's a little tedious. We want to speed up a little bit here. We're going slow. We're going about 160 right now. I'm going to gain some altitude. Still don't see the runway. I see it, but I don't see like the end of it where I want to land. You see that these houses and trees are covering it up, but alright, I might want to turn a little more here. Don't ever take approach advice from me. So we're at 150. I want to get that attitude indicator on the touchdown zone of the runway, which means I got to slow down a little bit maybe. So maybe I was wrong about being slow earlier. Want to make small, tiny adjustments. So here's about where I want to be. Put that attitude indicator on the touchdown zone. Hold about 150 knots. I'm a little heavy for landing. I see I have about 20,000 pounds of fuel. That's my radar altimeter warning. We're a little high here. No worries. It's gonna be a late landing. I'm gonna see if I can butter it, make it a little smooth. Okay, and we're down. So just tap the wheel brakes. And it would be about here that I start drifting off the runway, and I did drift off the runway and die. But I guess that's why we have anti-skid, even though I turned it on. I don't know what that was about, but I guess that concludes our tutorial. Next one will be about air-to-air basics and such. But I hope this helps. Thanks to Bob. Alright, he's the one I'm making this tutorial for, but yeah, that's about it. Yep, thank you.